Okay, we're live on YouTube. Meeting's yours, Mr. Chair.
Good evening. We'd like to welcome everyone to this Lyon Township Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Call to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
nation under God, indivisible, liberty and
justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Mike Barber,
I'm here in Jim Chuck's house in Lyon Township, present.
Lisa Blades,
Present in Lyon Township.
Jim Chuck,
Present, Lyon Township, Oakland County, Michigan.
Dean Whitcomb.
Present in Lyon Township. Missing Mr. Rainey tonight. We'll move on here. As a brief introduction, the Zoning Board of Appeals is a 5-member quasi-judicial body appointed by Lyon Township Board of Trustees for the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. Matters pending before the Zoning Board of Appeals are decided on a case-by-case basis. Any appeal of a decision made by the Zoning Board of Appeals is subject to circuit court review. Each case will be called separately in the order shown on tonight's agenda. There will be an opportunity for a public comment at one point during each case. All persons wishing to comment will be asked to provide their name and address. Address your comments to the board and not to the applicant or other members of the public. Please make your comments brief. Comments by neighborhood associations will be considered as part of the factual information presented to the board, but is not the determining factor for approval or denial. Please confine comments to the specific request before the board. For a request to be successful, an affirmative vote of at least 3 members present is required. We hope this helps provide a better understanding of what you can expect in tonight's meeting. And we will jump into the first case here. First case is Richard W. Gaunt, 21690.
We have to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have to approve the agenda and the minutes.
I'm sorry, Carol. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve
the agenda.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll support that.
We have a motion and a support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda has been approved. We'll look for approval of the draft minutes of May 17.
Motion to approve as submitted.
I'll support.
Motion for Mr. Chuck, support for Ms. Blades to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Jump the gun there a little bit. We'll jump into our first item of the evening. Richard W. Gaunt, 21690 North Dixboro Road in South Lyon, Sidwell number 21-31-100-009. The applicant is requesting a variance of section 14.01E2C of the zoning ordinance, which requires recreational vehicles not parked in a garage to be parked or stored in the rear or side yard. The applicant wishes to park and store their camper in the front yard. Therefore, a variance is being requested. Brian, if you don't mind, maybe we'll start with you of a review and discussion of your letter on the situation.
Sure, I'm happy to. And for the excuse me, for the sake of a visual here, we're talking about the proposed location of a gravel pad here at the southwest corner of this property. This is Dixboro Road. As you mentioned in the case description, the ordinance aims to put any RV storage that is not in an enclosed building behind the front of the home. And so this is about a 2-acre parcel, a little bit larger than 2 acres. And so the ordinance itself envisions that the RV be stored back in this area. In terms of our letter, you have that in the packet, and it is dated June 18th. And in review of the 5 standards for any zoning appeal or variance in this case, we've got a couple comments. In terms of strict strict compliance with the restrictions governing the RV storage. It does, the applicant notes that there are a lot of arboretum quality trees on the property, and it's apparent from the aerials that that it is a heavily wooded site. We noted that the area north of the garage seems to be a reasonable location, and so as an alternative, and so we've requested some additional information. And I know Mr. Gaunt is on the call, and he can describe his response letter to you when it's his turn to describe the request. But I do seek some clarification on that, why that isn't a good location, because it seems reasonable from the outside. In terms of substantial justice to the applicant, we don't see a lot of impact to adjacent property owners. However, we do call for some screening if you decide that the request is appropriate this evening. The screening especially would be appropriate on the south side, potentially depending on how the RV would get placed onto the pad. Screening along the road could be another way to make sure that there's no visual impact here. In terms of a lesser variance, there isn't one. What we're discussing this evening is just the location in front of the house. And while the RV could be placed closer to the house in front, we're really looking at, is it in front of the house or is it not? And so in terms of the relief you would grant, I would say you're pushing for behind or no variance at all. In terms of the unique circumstances, this is again where I'm calling for some additional clarification from the applicant. I do think that providing a full tree survey on the property is a burdensome request for something like this, but definitely a depiction or a description of the species of trees that are going to be saved by going this route rather than another would be absolutely a reasonable thing to discuss with Mr. Gaunt. Then finally, our fifth criteria is that this couldn't have been created by the applicant or predecessors. And from the view that I'm taking, it looks like the placement of the house and the addition of all the structures and the addition of the garage appears that that this could have been or was something that was created in combination from the applicant or the predecessors. So I think that the clarifications that we are seeking really are, is there another alternative on the property that is reasonable to use? And if so, we would suggest, we would recommend a denial. But if the applicant's responses to that are appropriate and are in fact a reasonable, they remove burden from the property owner, I think that it may be appropriate to consider granting the variance.
If I may,
Yes, Carol, go ahead.
Brian, Lisa dropped off. Look for her. She's trying to get back in.
I will look out for her.
All right, thank you.
Just to clarify, we still have 3, so we could take a vote if she can't get back in.
Okay. Yeah, we'll give her just a minute here. And
Yeah.
Mr. Gaunt, we're gonna allow you to speak next here on the case and the variance request. We're just gonna give Lisa just a moment here to see if she can reconnect.
You better hang in there, Mike. If they lose us, they lose too. Yeah, a little bit of dead air there. I had to say something.
No problem.
This wouldn't happen if we were in the township hall.
Well, I know you have some power outages going on there, so it could be
Yeah.
impacting things.
Oh, that weather last night was something. And we were actually lucky compared to a lot of people in the metro area.
Right, right.
Lisa looks like
Here's
she's
Lisa.
reconnecting now.
All right.
Lisa, welcome back.
Sorry about that, you guys.
No problem, no problem.
Was,
Right. So Brian finished up and we just kind of filled a little space till you got back. So you haven't missed.
All right, thanks. I appreciate it.
Sure. Brian, if you wouldn't mind unmuting Mr. Gaunt, we'd love to give the applicant an opportunity to speak here.
Okay, Mr. Gaunt, press *6 on your keypad to unmute yourself.
Okay,
Mr. Gaunt, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and you?
Great, thanks. The floor is
Good.
yours to address your request and any, we obviously we're looking for some specific feedback based on Mr. Kesey's comments as well.
Sure. In response to the proposed alternate location north of the garage, it is a area where to access that would mean driving across or possibly even parking on top of a drainage tile that has been installed to help to remove the water from the eaves troughs, and a garage floor drain that takes water away from the garage. After our addition was done, water was puddling against the garage doors, so we had to have a drain installed. I would be a little concerned about possibly breaking that tile if we have to drive across it on a regular basis. The space there, while it is wide enough, is a little bit restrictive lengthwise. When you include the tow truck and the RV camper, the overall length makes it a little bit cumbersome to get around the trees and get into that area and get the vehicle unhooked. Also, that area was graded to remove the water from the foundation and the footings for the garage, which has created a slope that runs to the north downward, and parking that area makes it very tricky to try to get the camper in a level condition, which is critical for keeping the operation of the appliances and so on. If we want to pre-cool the refrigerator, if it's not level, it's just not going to work for us. Of lesser importance, but still of concern, on the neighbor's property bordering our property there are significant trees that have a lot of dead material in them and have dropped a lot of limbs. We would be a little concerned about putting the camper there and potentially having another tree fall issue and possibly damaging the unit. The concern about other trees, we had talked about whether or not putting it into behind the house would make sense. We have a outstanding approximately 60-foot tall sycamore tree right behind the garage, which is a really unique tree to this area and has a huge span accessing the backyard from the other side to the south of the house is complicated by a couple of 50 to 60-foot tall tulip poplars. And we have red buds and white pines and other trees along the driveway that, again, working into that area to the north of the garage is at risk of breaking limbs off of trees that we would have to maneuver around to get in there. We do have a lot of black locust trees on the property as well, which are very perfumey ornamental trees. In regards to the suggestion of evergreens being planted to help to screen the south of the property, we're very open to that suggestion. We have installed a 6-foot tall privacy fence, 32-foot length of it, running east and west along the south edge of the property, back stepped a little ways away from the property line, such that the existing honeysuckles and locust trees and other materials that are growing in there were not destroyed to put the fence in. But we would gladly add some more green giant arborvitaes or some corkscrew willow trees or something there, which grow real quickly and could help to create additional screening on that south side of the property.
Okay. Before we open the public hearing and then we'll discuss as a board, does anyone on the board have any specific informational questions for Mr. Gaunt or Mr. Kesey?
Not at this time for I.
How much does a camper weigh?
I believe fully loaded, it's about 6,500 pounds.
So it's only a single axle? It's not a
Double axle.
It is a double axle, 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's a 23-foot unit.
Okay.
Brian, would you be able to look up, or at least refer to me to the ordinance about the protected trees for the township, and specifically where we have with sycamore and black locust, are those considered, I think they used to be called like legacy trees or something like that? And
Protected or landmark trees.
landmark trees, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so we have a sycamore that's greater than 18 inches. What were the other species?
Tulip poplars.
So tulip
and
trees
black
are
locust.
they are on that list. Again, 18 inches. I do not see locust on the list. But the sycamore and the tulip tree would certainly qualify as landmark trees.
And Brian, what's that ordinance, please, the number?
That is section 18-182 of the tree protection ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and open up the public hearing at 7:19 p.m. This would be an opportunity for the public that may want to comment on the application.
Okay, we've got two callers. If either would like to make a comment, press *9 on your keypad. That will raise your hand, and then I will call on you, and then state your name and address for the record. Okay, unfortunately, I don't have a telephone number. It just says call in user 2. But the one who has your hand raised, press *6 on your keypad to unmute yourself. And then say your name and address for the record, please. Go ahead, caller. Oh, you are unmuted. Let's try again. Press *6 to
There you go.
unmute yourself. There you go. Can you hear us, caller?
Yes.
All right, go ahead with your name and address, please.
I prefer to remain anonymous. It's just that I drive by this place every day, and seeing a trailer parked out front is not my idea of moving to South Lyon for the tranquility of Oakland County and the South Lyon community. I don't think trailers parked in the front of houses need to be here. I think there's a way you could park it behind your freaking house, and everybody would be happy and there'd be no problems. Now you're trying to probably save some money, I get it, but you know what? I don't want to see it when I drive by every day. Just don't need it. That's my opinion, and you can record it as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Appreciate it. I see another hand raised. Brian, if you want to go ahead.
Excuse me, Dean, before we continue with that, with any public comment, Carol, are we supposed to take public comment from anonymous?
Well, we are required, they're required to provide their name and address pursuant to the rules we set for these Zoom meetings. If they don't do that, I guess you can weigh whether or not anything that individual has just said has any significance to this. We don't even know if he lives in Lyon Township. We don't know if he lives near the property. So, if he doesn't want to identify himself, it's difficult to really place much weight into what has just been said.
If future callers do not identify themselves, are we still obligated to hear their comment?
Well, we've set it up where they're supposed to identify themselves by name and address.
I think you put it great, Carol, that maybe we just make them aware of that. If
Yeah.
they still choose to remain anonymous, that it may lose
Yeah,
value.
probably their comments are probably not going to be significant at all to any of us.
Right.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
have one more hand raised. I believe it's Dominic. You press *6 on your keypad, that will unmute you, and then say your name and address for the record. Go ahead, Dominic.
My name is Dominic Marchetti Jr. My address is 21689 North Dixboro Road. I live just to the west of the property in question. And I've already submitted a letter with exhibits that have been loaded to this meeting. I don't know if you've all had a chance to review my material, but if you haven't, I would certainly encourage you to do so. For the most part,
just so you know, we were provided with all the information, so everyone has had a chance to review it.
okay, I won't read the letter. I'll leave that to you. But Brian, I read your report, and for the most part, agree with just about everything that you've said. And the only part that I have, I guess, exception to is that you reference the neighbors to the south, but you don't reference the neighbors to the west. And we're the ones that are going to end up seeing this thing in the front yard all the time. It's the location is closer to the road than it is to the home. And I just feel that it's something that's not appealing and can be the potential of an eyesore for the rest of us neighbors across the road. I've spoken to the neighbors to the north and south of my home, and we are all in agreement. I'm not going to speak for them. They have opted not to join this meeting. That's fine. But as a verbal confirmation, I would like to submit that, that we are all in agreement that it's something we would not want to look at. As far as using the north side, Brian, I think you're spot right on with your analysis. We had a similar situation not that long ago where our artesian well, the tile field gave out over time. It just got clogged with minerals and whatnot. Our solution to that problem was to install a PVC pipe in a declined trench exiting into our pond. By doing so, there was no need to have a slope on the ground surface. You can maintain a level surface on the ground. As far as the trees, there are a lot of trees on the property, not just on the north side, not just in the backyard, but also in the area being proposed to store the RV. So the potential of a tree falling or bumping into limbs are going to be anywhere you try to park your RV. There's been occasions over the past year where Mr. Gaunt has been trimming the trees or taking them down. I don't know what kind of trees they were, but it appears that there's a clearing process going on. Additionally, if someone can open up Exhibit A for me, please. Brian, is that something you can do? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Just one moment. We're working on it right now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that document is up now for everyone to see.
Okay, I don't see it, but I can tell you what it is. It's an aerial view from the Oakland County Property Gateway. It's from 2017. In that particular aerial view, the addition of the garage was not there, meaning that there was plenty of room to the north side of the garage to park an RV. Not to mention, there was probably substantial room to be able to drive to get into the backyard in order to park an RV. If you open up Exhibit B, which is basically the same aerial photography, the image, but taken in 2020.
Yes, sir. We have that open now.
All right. In that image, you can see the new garage addition, which was built by Mr. Gaunt. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that it seems to me he's caused this limiting factor, which addresses Part 5 or Part E of Brian's report.
Well, Mr. Marchetti, I appreciate the comments and the preparation you put into them to make your case. Thank you very much for that. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak at this time?
No more callers, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will close the public hearing at 7:28. And we will commence discussion amongst the board. Mike or
You should
Lisa?
ask
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead.
Gaunt if Mr.
Sure.
Gaunt may want to comment
Thank you,
again on
yes.
it. Well,
Mr. Gaunt, you have the floor if you'd like, sir, if you'd like to reply to any of that. You'll need to *6 to unmute yourself. There we go.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, go ahead.
The neighbor to the west is, Dominic is talking about tree removal and so on. We did in fact take out a number of trees. The development of the pavement of Dixboro Road, the upgrading of the grade and the shoulders and so on. The road commission took out a lot of trees. We took out some trees that were nuisance trees. The neighbor to my south had a enormous box elder come crashing down. Half of it fell into my property and took out 3 of my 40-plus foot tall white pine trees that we ended up cleaning that area up and putting privacy fence in to replace what had been a natural screen of our own trees prior to his tree falling. And then on top of that, closer to the road, we had a equally dangerous box elder that was probably 100+ years old and looked like it was getting ready to fall onto the neighbor's property to the south. So we hired a company to come in to take that down because it was outside of our abilities. It was just way too huge for us to handle. I guess that's really all I can say is, I'm trying to take care of this in a way that preserves the trees that are specimen items and to try to avoid driving on top of my drain tiles.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gaunt. All right, we'll open it up
Thank
to
you.
discussion. Thank you. We'll open up to discussion of the board. Jim, Mike, or Lisa?
Brian, I have another question for you. In looking at the tree ordinance and trying to review the replacement requirements. So if this applicant did end up trying to place the camper somewhere else on his property, it says in this, what is it? 18-202 in the table that says outside of a subdivision, site condominium, or similar residential development, that is it up to 10 protected trees per 12-month period, a permit is not required, but tree replacement is required. So if he has to take down 2 protected trees, he needs to replace them. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then if it is more than So even if he takes one tree down, one protected tree, he's got to replace it.
Yes,
Okay. And then if it's more than 11, he needs a permit and he also needs to replace. Okay.
yes.
That is the only question I have at this time.
All right, Dean, I'll get started if you.
Chuck, fire away. Yes, sir.
You know, after listening and reading and taking the 5 criteria, first of all, in my mind, 3 of them are not even remotely being met in terms of, I don't believe this was a unique circumstance. There was different things that went on during the property, either with the current owner or previous owner. The problem resulting in need for a variance has not been self-created. Well, it has been, as well as it appears there may be space on the north. Okay, now we're into trees and replacing them, as Lisa pointed out. However, you know, it's kind of like buying a 22-foot truck and trying to get it into a 16-foot garage. I don't know how much thought was put into this, but I was a motorhome owner, not an RV, a motorhome. And I just had to go find a place to park it, and I had to rent the space. And sometimes that's what you have to do, because I just don't see this working as it's presented. And I believe the comments from, I believe it was Mr. Dominic Marchetti, I believe they're very valid, and that's how I stand right now. I don't think I can support this variance.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Barber?
Yeah. I think a 6,000-pound double axle trailer, I don't think it is. I'm not an engineer. I don't know, but I don't know what we're looking at for that by the garage where he has an underground pipe for drainage. I don't know if it would crush it. I don't know if it's crushable. It could be PVC and not crushable in that case. I don't know if that's the reason. And so backing into a space like that with a truck hauling a trailer is a skill, and you'd have to do the same thing in a campground. And so I'm thinking he could probably put it there by the garage, because I don't think it'll collapse the pipes. I don't know if it's a good idea. If it's wet outside of where that pipe drainage is at, he may get the trailer stuck in there. That's a possibility, and that's where I'm unsure of. I don't have enough information. But I'm thinking something can be done to pour a slab there or something, or put gravel in there so it doesn't sink in, if that's what his problem is. Miss the trees when you back up. So I'm thinking he could still do that. I'm done. I'm finished.
Thanks, Mike. Lise?
Well, I'm a camper owner, not an RV like, or not a rig like Jim had, but I do know that there are some specifics of dealing with keeping the camper level and the importance of that, because it does throw off your refrigerator, especially. And so I understand some of the difficulty. I did take a look at the aerial and to see about the feasibility of going to the north. I guess my concern is that we have as a big goal of our township tree preservation, and that's why I had several of my previous questions dealt with trees. If we're looking at the tulip poplar and the sycamore, and these are considered landmark trees, I would hate to see that our goal of tree preservation is being it's at odds with where somebody could park a camper. And so I'm leaning more toward trying to protect some trees in that case, since landmark trees are really supposed to have some special consideration within a community. So I guess I'm also torn as well, because I think a lot of this is usually taken care of with parking campers if you live in a subdivision, if you live and you have an HOA. But it seems like we don't really have a whole lot of single family homes anymore that are not part of a subdivision or an HOA that would end up regulating that. And so whichever way this goes tonight, I wanted to get maybe the ZBA's opinion on this. Like, should it be the time that we start looking at our, this particular ordinance in general, specific to non-subdivision, non-plat development, non-HOA parcels? So I guess that's a side question, but I definitely understand the difficulty of getting around the site. I understand the grading issue with maintaining a level. I guess if he's willing to plant some screening, perhaps even for the neighbor to the west, I don't know the feasibility of that. So I'm interested to hear Dean's comments on this, because I'm still very much undecided at this point.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I would tend to agree with Jim here. I think that first of all, some of the things that stood out to me, it's cumbersome to get in and out. It's not impossible to be on the north side. It's tricky to level. It's not impossible. Those are things that can be done within the ordinance on the property. They might be a little tougher, but they're doable. And there's clearly an impact to an adjacent property owner who's very clearly communicated that to us this evening as well. I guess I don't interpret the north side as jeopardizing at protected trees based on just what I've seen. And if it did, I feel like we have ordinances in place as a backstop for that. That's really not our issue tonight. That, you know, there's things in place to cover that. So I really struggle with supporting this for all the things that Jim said, as well as, you know, my additional comments. Any other thoughts, Carol? Anything here, or Brian? Brian, let me ask you this: is the drain tile project a something that was permitted by the township? Is that a permit process, or is that just done generally?
I know that the building official will look at water runoff when additions to structures get permitted. I don't know if that was the case specifically here. Yeah, I'm not knowledgeable enough. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Okay, if there's any other comments or
Dean, one other
conversation.
comment.
Yes, sir.
One other, you know, and again, everything everyone on this board said, I take seriously, and I understand both sides of the coin, but in this case, there is a solution. It may not be exactly what the applicant would like, but there is a solution. And unfortunately, those are some of the things that go with owning a boat, owning an RV, owning a motorhome. And those are things that need to be considered prior, so to speak, of getting involved in it. So I just wanted to add that comment.
Very good. If there's no other comments or questions or conversation, I believe a motion is probably in order.
I hate to say it, but I don't have the Sidwell and the information in front of me, so I'll have to forfeit the motion.
Well, I will not be making a motion because I think I'm the only one who would be in favor of this. So I will not be making a motion.
I have the information here, but I don't think I'm in a position sharing the meeting.
Yeah, Jim, I don't think it's necessary that you specifically recite the Sidwell number and everything.
Okay, well,
If you're
and
prepared
Jim-
to make a motion, this is the only item and we'll know what it is.
Yeah.
okay. Again, I apologize. I indicated I've been having trouble with my printer. I read the information and I should have written that down, but I didn't. But I will make a motion that the case before us asking for the variance to park 23-foot RV trailer be denied based on the information provided, as well as not meeting the criteria of unique circumstances. The fact that it was a needed variance, it was self-created, as well as there was additional opportunities to the north of the property in the home that could potentially have been one of the solutions. But as presented, I feel that we need to deny this request for the,
Should we mention Dominic Marchetti's epilogue here?
I mean, that was public comment. I don't know as though that needs to get in there, but,
Okay. Right.
but anyway, based on the information provided and the criteria not met as the 5 criteria, I would deny the variance as presented.
I think that's a fine motion. Carol, what do you think?
Fine.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a support?
I'll support Mike Barber.
All right, we have a motion to deny the variance request and support by Mr. Barber. Should we do roll call votes, Carol? I don't recall. It's just,
No, you can just do a regular
Okay.
vote.
okay, all those in favor of denying the motion, please say aye.
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 And those opposed to denying the motion.
Opposed?
That's 3-1 that the motion, the variance request has been denied. Mr. Gahn, I appreciate you going through the process and the public comments as well. Go on, thank you for that. Seeing as that was the only item on our agenda this evening, unless there's anything else that any of the board has, I think a motion to adjourn is probably in order.
Go ahead, Mike.
To adjourn?
Please, it's motion to adjourn.
Support, Mike.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening.
everyone.
Night, everyone.
Have a
Lisa,
great
I
4th.
look forward to
we'll see you
discussing your
next time
sidebar.
around.
Right.